the Illuminati, Freemasons, and Knights Templar, the original secret societies. Hello and welcome to Driftwood Histories. Tonight, we won't be sailing across open seas, but drifting through the quiet, hidden currents of time. We're journeying into the shadows, to the place where history and myth hold hands, where symbols whisper secrets, and where power operates not on a throne, but from behind a veil. There are stories etched into the very foundations of our world, stories of brotherhoods, orders, and societies that have shaped empires, sparked revolutions, and fueled our deepest curiosities. They are the original secret societies. So, find a comfortable place. Let the world outside fade away. Close your eyes, and allow my voice to be your guide as we unveil the truths and myths behind three of the most enigmatic groups in human history: the pious and powerful Knights Templar, the philosophical and ever-present Freemasons, and the infamous, almost mythical Illuminati. Our journey begins not with conspiracy, but with faith on the dusty, blood-soaked roads of the Holy Land. The year is 1119. The air in the Kingdom of Jerusalem hangs thick with the scent of incense, dust, and ever-present danger. Just 2 decades have passed since the armies of the First Crusade stormed the city's walls, a brutal, bloody affair that established a fragile Christian foothold in a hostile land. For the pilgrims who now flocked from Europe, the journey was an act of supreme faith. They traveled thousands of miles to touch the stones of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, to walk the Via Dolorosa, to breathe the air their Savior once breathed. But the roads were a gauntlet of death. The path from the port city of Jaffa to the holy city of Jerusalem was infested with bandits and Saracen raiders who preyed on the vulnerable. In one infamous incident at Easter of 1119, a group of 700 unarmed pilgrims was ambushed. 300 were slaughtered, and 60 were taken captive. The dream of salvation had become a nightmare. The new kingdom, it seemed, could conquer cities but could not protect its own flock. It was in this climate of perilous piety that a French nobleman from Champagne, a veteran of the First Crusade named Hugues de Payens, sought an audience with Baldwin II, the King of Jerusalem. He was accompanied by 8 other knights, including his relative Godfrey de Saint-Omer. Their proposal was radical, almost heretical. They wished to form a new kind of monastic order. They would take the traditional vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, but they would not spend their days in prayer and contemplation. They would wield swords. They would be warrior monks, a brotherhood dedicated to God, but tasked with the worldly, brutal duty of protecting the faithful on the roads. King Baldwin, desperate and pragmatic, saw the merit in this strange proposition. He granted their request and gave them a headquarters in a wing of his own royal palace, located on the Temple Mount. This was a site of immense holiness not just to Christians, but to Jews and Muslims as well. It was the place where the Temple of Solomon was believed to have stood. It was from this sacred ground that the new order drew its name, the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. History, with its love for brevity, would simply call them the Knights Templar. For the first 9 years, their existence was humble, almost invisible. There were only 9 of them. They had no official uniform, no vast resources. They were so poor, legend has it, that Hugues de Payens and Godfrey de Saint-Omer had to share a single horse. This imaged 2 knights on one steed would become their official seal, a powerful symbol of their initial commitment to poverty and brotherhood, an image that would later stand in stark, ironic contrast to the unimaginable wealth they would amass. But these were not just 9 ordinary knights. They were well-connected. Hugues de Payens was related to powerful families in France, and he understood the art of politics as well as the art of war. In 1127, he traveled back to Europe with a mission, to gain official recognition for the order and, more importantly, to recruit men and money. His timing was perfect. Europe was still gripped by crusading fever. The idea of a holy warrior, a monk with a sword, captured the medieval imagination. His most crucial meeting was with Bernard of Clairvaux, the most powerful and influential churchman of the age. Bernard, a Cistercian abbot, was a spiritual titan, a kingmaker, and a brilliant theologian. He was captivated by the Templars' mission. He saw in them the ideal Christian knight, fighting not for land or glory, but for Christ. In 1129, at the Council of Troyes, Bernard of Clairvaux personally championed the Templars' cause. He penned a treatise, in praise of the new knighthood, which served as both a theological justification and a powerful recruitment pamphlet. He contrasted the pious Templars with the vain, secular knights of Europe. The Templars, he wrote, were fearless, secure on every side, as their soul is protected by the armor of faith, just as their body is protected by the armor of steel. They are thus doubly armed and need fear neither demons nor men. The council officially recognized the order and tasked Bernard with writing their Rulia set of 72 clauses defining their life. It was a strict code, blending the austerity of monastic life with the rigors of military discipline. They were to eat in silence, avoid the company of women, wear simple clothes and forsake all personal property. But they were also trained for war, their lives a perpetual state of readiness. With the Pope's blessing and Bernard's powerful endorsement, the floodgates opened. Donations poured in. Noble families across Europe, eager to secure their place in heaven, gifted the order land, castles, farms, vineyards, and vast sums of money. The Templars established local branches or commanderies in every major kingdom. These acted as recruitment centers, training grounds, and administrative hubs. A new recruit would cede all his property to the order, and in return, he received sustenance, armor, and a chance at martyrdom. The Templars were no longer 9 men on a horse. They had become a global corporation, a multinational army, a spiritual and financial superpower, accountable only to the Pope himself. Their military prowess became legendary. In the Holy Land, they were the elite fighting force of the Crusader armies. Disciplined, heavily armored, and fanatically brave, a small contingent of Templars could turn the tide of a battle. At the Battle of Montcassard in 1177, a force of around 500 Templar knights helped a small Crusader army led by the young, leper King Baldwin IV defeat a massive Saracen army of over 26,000 led by Saladin himself. It was a victory so stunning it was considered a miracle. The Templars, charging under their black and white banner, the Bucient, were seen as the instrument of God's will. But their influence stretched far beyond the battlefield. Their vast, interconnected network of commanderies across Europe and the Holy Land made them uniquely positioned to handle finance. They pioneered a system that was, in essence, the world's first international banking network. A nobleman planning a pilgrimage to Jerusalem could deposit his gold and valuables at the London Temple, receive a coded letter of credit, and travel with only that letter. Upon arrival in the Holy Land, he could present the letter at a Templar preceptory and withdraw the equivalent sum. This ingenious system made travel safer and spurred commerce. They became the trusted bankers to the great and powerful. They managed the treasury of the French monarchy. They arranged massive loans to kings and popes. They held crowns and royal jewels as collateral. The Paris Temple was not just a church. It was the financial heart of Europe, a fortress-like vault that was considered the safest depository on the continent. Their wealth was staggering, their power immense. They owned fleets of ships, the island of Cyprus, and vast tracts of land. They had become a state within a state, a silent, powerful empire. But with great power comes great envy, and an even greater target. By the late 13th century, the political climate had shifted. The crusading spirit was waning. The Holy Land, for which they had fought and died, was lost. In 1291, the city of Acre, the last Christian stronghold, fell to the Mamluks. The Templars fought to the last man, their Grand Master at the time, Guillaume de Beaujeu, dying in the defense. The survivors retreated to their fortress on the island of Cyprus. Their original purpose was now gone, but their wealth, their power, and their secrecy remained. Back in Europe, a king with an empty treasury and an insatiable ambition was watching. Philip IV of France, known as Philip the Fair for his handsome features, not his character, was a ruthless and cunning monarch. He had expelled the Jews from France to seize their assets. He had debased the currency to pay his debts. Now his eyes fell upon the Templars. He saw not a holy order, but a wealthy, arrogant, and dangerously independent organization operating within his kingdom. A bank he could not control and a military force that did not answer to him. He wanted their money, and he would stop at nothing to get it. Philip, with his chief minister Guillaume de Nogaret, began to weave a web of conspiracy. They spread dark rumors. They collected testimony from disgruntled ex-Templars, bribing or coercing them to spin tales of heresy and depravity. They built a secret case against the order, preparing for a strike of unprecedented scale and precision. The blow fell at dawn on Friday, October 13, 1307. In a perfectly coordinated operation, Philip's men simultaneously arrested every Templar in France they could find. Hundreds of knights, including their distinguished elderly Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, were dragged from their beds and thrown into dungeons. The charges, read out to a stunned public, were a cocktail of the most heinous crimes imaginable in the medieval world. The Templars were accused of heresy, of denying Christ and spitting on the cross during their secret initiation rites. They were accused of idolatry, of worshipping a strange, bearded head called Baphomet. They were accused of institutionalized sodomy and of financial corruption. The charges were designed to shock, to horrify, to turn the public against the once revered knights. What followed was one of the most unjust trials in history. The arrested Templars were handed over to royal inquisitors, who used systematic and horrific torture to extract confessions. The rack, the strappado, the burning of feet knights who had faced down Saracen armies broke under the torment. They confessed to everything and anything. They spoke of secret nocturnal ceremonies, of trampling the crucifix, of obscene kisses, of worshipping a demonic cat. Jacques de Molay himself, a man in his 60s, was tortured relentlessly. He confessed, admitting the order had engaged in the denial of Christ. His confession, though likely false and extracted under duress, was a devastating blow to the order's credibility. Pope Clement V, a Frenchman who owed his papacy to Philip, was caught in a political vice. He was initially outraged by Philip's high-handed actions, but the king's pressure was immense. In 1307, under the weight of the so-called confessions, the Pope issued the papal bull Pastoralis Preeminentia, ordering all Christian monarchs to arrest the Templars in their own lands and seize their assets. The Inquisition was now church-sanctioned. The trials dragged on for years. In 1310, a group of Templars in Paris attempted to mount a defense, courageously retracting their forced confessions. Philip's response was swift and brutal. 54 of these knights were declared relapsed heretics and burned at the stake in a single day. The message was clear: silence or death. Finally, in 1312, at the Council of Vienne, Pope Clement V officially dissolved the Knights Templar. He did not declare them guilty of heresy, the evidence was too tainted, but suppressed the order for the good of the Church, citing the scandal it had caused. Their vast properties were to be transferred to their rivals, the Knights Hospitaller, though in reality, King Philip and other monarchs helped themselves to a significant share. The order that had dominated the medieval world for 2 centuries was wiped from existence in less than 7 years. The final, tragic act played out on March 18, 1314. Jacques de Molay and Geoffrey de Charnay, another high-ranking Templar, were brought to a scaffold on an island in the Seine, in front of the Cathedral of Notre Dame. They were meant to publicly reaffirm their guilt and be sentenced to perpetual imprisonment. But in a final, spectacular act of defiance, they proclaimed their and the order's innocence to the assembled crowd. They declared that their only crime was to have betrayed their brothers and their order under the agony of torture. An enraged King Philip, without consulting the papal legates, ordered them to be burned as relapsed heretics that very evening. As the flames rose around him, it is said that de Molay shouted a curse, summoning both Pope Clement and King Philip to appear before God's judgment seat within the year. Whether truth or legend, the curse seemed to hold. Pope Clement died of a terrible illness just 1 month later. King Philip died in a hunting accident before the year was out. The Capetian dynasty, which had ruled France for centuries, would soon crumble. But the story of the Templars doesn't truly end with the smoke and ashes in Paris. It simply goes underground, fading into the realm of myth and enduring mystery. What happened to their legendary treasure? The Templar fleet, a massive armada of ships moored at the port of La Rochelle, mysteriously vanished on the eve of the arrests, its destination unknown. Did they carry the Templar gold, their sacred relics, their secret archives to safety? This is where the whispers begin, weaving a tapestry of possibilities that has captivated historians and conspiracy theorists for 700 years. Some say the fleet sailed to Scotland, a kingdom at the time excommunicated by the Pope and thus a safe haven. There, it is said, Templar knights aided Robert the Bruce in his fight for independence against the English, their sudden appearance at the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314 turning the tide. In Scotland, the theory goes, their esoteric knowledge and secret traditions were absorbed into the lodges of stonemasons, laying the hidden groundwork for what would, centuries later, emerge as Freemasonry. Others believe the surviving Templars and their treasure found refuge in Portugal. King Dinis I of Portugal refused to persecute the order. Instead, he cleared them of all charges and simply rebranded them as the Order of Christ. This new order inherited the Templars' assets and continued their maritime traditions. It was the Order of Christ, with the Templar cross still emblazoned on its sails, that would finance Portugal's great age of discovery, funding the voyages of explorers like Vasco da Gama and Henry the Navigator. Did Templar wealth and knowledge fuel the discovery of the New World? And then there is the grandest conspiracy of all. The idea that the Templars, during their long tenure on the Temple Mount, unearthed something of world-shattering importance. Not gold or jewels, but a secret treasure of knowledge. Could it have been the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, or perhaps, lost gospels detailing the true life of Jesus, a version that contradicted church doctrine, revealing him to be a mortal prophet with a bloodline? This hidden knowledge, this secret, they say, was the true source of the Templars' power, and the real reason they had to be so utterly and ruthlessly destroyed. The historical record is silent. But silence, as we know, is where legends are born and where the seeds of new secret societies are sown. The Knights Templar, the warrior monks who became the bankers of Christendom, haunt our collective imagination not just for what they were, but for what they might have become. They are the first great ghost of secret history, a story of faith, power, betrayal, and a mystery that has never been laid to rest. As we leave the medieval world of crusades and castles, let us carry with us the image of that red cross on a white mantle. It is a symbol that has come to mean many things: piety, courage, wealth, heresy, and ultimately, an enduring secret. A secret that would be picked up, reinterpreted, and woven into the very fabric of another, even more widespread brotherhood, the Freemasons. From the smoldering ashes of the Knights Templar, a new kind of brotherhood was taking shape, not on the battlefields of the Holy Land, but in the stone-dusted lodges and workshops of Europe. They were not knights, but craftsmen. Not warriors, but builders. They did not carry swords, but working tools. The square to measure their actions, the compasses to circumscribe their desires, and the gavel to divest their hearts and consciences of all the vices of life. They called themselves Freemasons, and their temple was not a physical place, but an allegorical one, built within the heart of man. The story of Freemasonry is a labyrinth of symbols, rituals, and competing origin stories. To the outside world, it is often seen as a shadowy cabal of powerful men, manipulating world events from secret, smoke-filled rooms. To its members, it is a beautiful system of morality, veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. The truth, as is often the case, lies somewhere in the murky, fascinating space between. Where did they come from? To unravel this mystery, we must first dismiss the most romantic, yet least substantiated theory, that they are the direct descendants of the Knights Templar. As we explored, the story of fugitive Templars sheltering in the stonemason guilds of Scotland is a tantalizing one. It connects the warrior monks to the philosopher builders, a neat and dramatic lineage. And while there are intriguing symbolic overlaps, the temple, the two pillars, the skull and crossbones, most historians view this link as a later invention, a Masonic creation myth designed to give the craft an ancient and noble pedigree. The more historically grounded theory traces Freemasonry's origins to the operative stonemason guilds of the late Middle Ages. Picture the scene. A great cathedral, perhaps Chartres or Cologne, rising slowly, painstakingly towards the heavens over decades, even centuries. The men who built it were not mere laborers. They were highly skilled artisans, masters of geometry, engineering, and the secret properties of stone. This knowledge was their livelihood, a source of immense pride and power. These masons were itinerant, traveling from one grand project to the next. To protect their trade secrets, to ensure quality standards, and to recognize a fellow trained craftsman in a foreign town, they developed a system of secret signs, handshakes, grips, and passwords. Their meeting places, temporary workshops set up at the construction site, were called lodges. It was here they rested, planned their work, passed on their knowledge, and initiated new apprentices into the mysteries of their craft. But as the great era of cathedral building waned in the 16th and 17th centuries, these operative lodges began to change. They started accepting members who had never touched a chisel in their lives. These were local gentlemen, merchants, intellectuals, and aristocrats. They were accepted or speculative masons, men drawn not to the physical craft of stone, but to the philosophical and moral allegories that could be drawn from it, and to the fellowship and intellectual discourse the lodges provided. The tools of the stonemason were no longer used to shape rock. They were used to shape character. The rough ashlar, an undressed stone, came to represent man in his natural, imperfect state. The perfect ashlar, a smooth, squared stone, represented man perfected by the virtues and education taught in the lodge. The square taught morality, the compasses taught restraint, and the level taught equality. This transition from operative to speculative Freemasonry culminated in a pivotal moment on a summer day in 1717. On St. John the Baptist's Day, June 24th, 4 of these speculative lodges in London gathered at the Goose and Gridiron Alehouse near St. Paul's Cathedral. There, they formed the first Grand Lodge of England. This event is considered the birth of modern, organized Freemasonry. It was no longer a scattered collection of trade guilds. It was a formal, philosophical society with a centralized authority, dedicated to the burgeoning principles of the Enlightenment, reason, tolerance, and the brotherhood of man. Freemasonry spread with astonishing speed. Its ideals were perfectly in tune with the spirit of the age. In a world still defined by rigid class hierarchy and bitter religious strife, the lodge offered a unique and radical sanctuary. It was a place where a nobleman and a merchant, a Protestant and a Catholic, at least in the early days, a scientist and an artist, could meet on the level, as equals. It became a crucible for free thought, a private space to discuss science, philosophy, and politics away from the watchful, and often punitive, eyes of the absolute monarchies and the established church. Its membership list reads like a who's who of the 18th and 19th centuries. In the American colonies, it became a network for revolutionaries. George Washington was a master mason, and he took his presidential oath of office on a Bible from a New York Masonic lodge. Benjamin Franklin was a Grand Master of Pennsylvania. Paul Revere, John Hancock, and 13 other signers of the Declaration of Independence were all brothers of the craft. The Boston Tea Party was allegedly planned in the Green Dragon Tavern, a Masonic meeting place. The very fabric of the new republic's emphasis on liberty, equality, and the pursuit of knowledge was woven with Masonic ideals. In Europe, its influence was just as profound. Voltaire, the great Enlightenment philosopher, was initiated on his deathbed. Montesquieu, whose ideas on the separation of powers influenced the U.S. Constitution, was a Mason. In the world of music, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was a devout member. His opera, The Magic Flute, is a deeply Masonic allegory, a beautiful and complex tale of the journey from the darkness of ignorance, the realm of the Queen of the Night, to the light of reason and wisdom, the Temple of Sarastro. So, what happens behind the closed doors of these lodges? What are the secret rituals that have inspired so much fascination, fear, and wild speculation? The core of Masonic practice is a series of allegorical plays or degrees, through which a candidate progresses to learn the fraternity's moral lessons. The foundational system is the Blue Lodge, which consists of 3 degrees. First, the entered apprentice. The candidate enters the lodge blindfolded, a symbol of his state of ignorance before receiving Masonic light. He is divested of all metal, symbolizing that he brings nothing of material wealth into the fraternity. He is led by a rope, called a cable tow, signifying his tie to the brotherhood and his submission to its guidance. He is taught the foundational virtues of morality and secrecy. Second, the fellowcraft. This degree focuses on the intellectual virtues, emphasizing the study of the liberal arts and sciences, particularly geometry, which is presented as the basis of Masonic philosophy. The candidate is symbolically paid his wages in corn, wine, and oil, symbols of nourishment, refreshment, and joy. Third, and most dramatically, the Master Mason. This degree is the heart of Masonic allegory. The candidate participates in a play centered on the building of King Solomon's temple and the fate of its master architect, Hiram Abiff. In the legend, Hiram possesses a secret, the Master's Word, the key to all Masonic knowledge. He is accosted by 3 ruffians who demand the secret. He refuses to divulge it, stating he would rather die than betray his sacred trust. True to his word, he is murdered. The candidate symbolically dies and is raised from the grave by the Master of the Lodge, representing a spiritual rebirth and the triumph of integrity and life over death and ignorance. These rituals, with their ancient symbolism and solemn theatricality, are designed to be a profound personal experience. However, to the outside world, this very secrecy has been a breeding ground for suspicion. The Catholic Church was one of the first and most vehement critics. In 1738, Pope Clement XII issued the papal bull In Eminenti Apostolatus Specula, condemning Freemasonry and forbidding Catholics from joining under penalty of excommunication. The Church saw Freemasonry's emphasis on religious tolerance, its welcoming of men from different faiths under the non-denominational banner of a great architect of the universe, as a dangerous form of religious indifferentism, a threat to the singular truth of the Catholic faith. The secret oaths were seen as the usurpation of the Church's authority. This opposition has persisted for centuries. Authoritarian regimes, both on the right and the left, have also suppressed Freemasonry. They saw it as a transnational network of intellectuals and freethinkers, a potential hotbed of liberal, democratic, and revolutionary ideas that could undermine their absolute control. Hitler, Mussolini, and Franco all banned the Masons, imprisoning and executing many of their members. And then, there are the conspiracy theories which have painted Freemasonry as the secret government of the world. These theories often fixate on the misinterpretation of Masonic symbols. The all-seeing eye, or the Eye of Providence, floating above the pyramid on the back of the US $1 bill, is a prime example. To Masons, this is a symbol of the watchful eye of the great architect, a reminder that one's thoughts and actions are always observed by a higher power. To conspiracy theorists, it is the eye of the Illuminati, a symbol of a vast surveillance network and sinister control. The square encompasses the pentagram or blazing star, the 2 pillars of Solomon's temple, Boaz and Jachin. All have been woven into elaborate narratives of satanic worship, world domination, and a hidden new world order. But is there any truth to these grand conspiracies? The reality is far more mundane, yet fascinating in its own right. Freemasonry is not a centralized, monolithic entity. It is a decentralized federation of independent Grand Lodges. The Grand Lodge of England has no authority over the Grand Lodge of France or New York. There is no single Masonic pope or world leader. They often disagree on points of ritual and recognition. While it is undeniable that many powerful and influential men have been Masons, and that these networks of fellowship can certainly confer social and professional advantages, there is no credible evidence of a coordinated, global Masonic conspiracy. Their influence is more subtle, more cultural. It is the influence of a shared philosophy that has quietly seeped into the foundations of Western democratic thought. The real secret of Freemasonry, if one exists, is not a blueprint for world domination. It is the shared experience of the ritual itself. It is the bond of brotherhood that transcends social station. The symbols are not a secret code for a global plot. They are a shared visual language for a journey of moral and intellectual self-improvement. Today, Freemasonry faces new challenges. In an age of social media and declining civic engagement, its membership in the West has dwindled. It struggles with an outdated public image as a secretive old boys club. Yet, it survives a quiet, enduring presence in nearly every town and city in the world. Its members continue to meet, to practice their ancient allegorical rituals, and to give vast sums to charitable causes. They are the speculative builders who no longer build with stone, but strive to build better men. They are the keepers of a rich tradition that is part guild, part philosophical society, and part mystery school. They are a living bridge between the Enlightenment and our own tumultuous times. And their history, with its emphasis on reason, secrecy, and hidden knowledge, is deeply and inextricably intertwined with that of our final, and most infamous, subject. A society so notorious, its very name has become synonymous with secret control, the Illuminati. The Knights Templar were real, and they became a legend. The Freemasons are real, and they are shrouded in legend. But the Illuminati are a legend that refuses to die, a ghost that haunts the machinery of the modern world. When you hear the name, what comes to mind? A shadowy council of global elites, meeting in secret to decide the fate of nations. Celebrities flashing cryptic hand signals in music videos. A single, unblinking eye on a pyramid, watching from the back of a dollar bill. A new world order patiently, silently, pulling the strings of government, finance, and media. For most, the Illuminati are not a historical society. They are a modern myth, a hyperlink in a conspiracy forum, a meme, a whisper. But before the myth, there was a man. And before the conspiracy, there was a plan. The Illuminati were real. And their true story is, in many ways, more fascinating, more radical, and stranger than the wildest theories it has spawned. Our story begins not in the dimly lit boardrooms of today, but in the heart of the European Enlightenment. The year is 1776, the same year America declared its independence from a king. In Bavaria, a deeply conservative and Catholic state in what is now Germany, a young, brilliant, and deeply frustrated professor of canon law named Adam Weishaupt decided that the world was broken and that he was the man to fix it. Weishaupt was a product of his time. He was educated by the Jesuits, but grew to despise their dogmatic control over education and politics. He devoured the works of the French philosophes Voltaire, Diderot, Rousseau, and became a fervent believer in the power of human reason. He believed that humanity, if freed from the shackles of religious superstition and monarchical tyranny, could achieve a state of moral perfection, a world governed not by princes or priests, but by enlightened reason. But how to achieve such a monumental change? A public revolution was impossible in autocratic Bavaria. The change had to come from within. It had to be secret. It had to be a conspiracy of the best and brightest minds, working in the shadows to slowly, meticulously, dismantle the old world and build a new one in its place. On the night of May 1st, 1776, a date still celebrated by some as a day of esoteric significance, Weishaupt and 4 of his most trusted students gathered in a forest near Ingolstadt. There, by candlelight, they founded the Order of the Perfectibilists. The name would soon be changed to something more resonant, more powerful. The Order of the Illuminati, the Enlightened Ones. Their goal was nothing short of world revolution, but a revolution of the mind. As Weishaupt wrote, they would abolish all national governments, patriotisms, and religions, and establish a new world order of universal happiness. To do this, they planned to secretly infiltrate the highest echelons of society. They would place their members in government courts, in universities, in the clergy, in the houses of nobility. From these positions of influence, they would subtly steer the course of history, guiding humanity towards a secular, rationalist utopia. The structure of the Illuminati was a masterpiece of clandestine design, borrowed from both the Jesuits and the esoteric traditions of the time. It was a pyramid of secrecy. New recruits or novices were not told the true, radical aims of the order. They were told it was a society for self-improvement and intellectual exploration. As they proved their loyalty and intelligence, they were initiated into higher degrees Minerval, Illuminatus Minor, Illuminatus Major, each one revealing a little more of Weishaupt's audacious plan. Members adopted classical pseudonyms to protect their identities. Weishaupt himself was Spartacus, the leader of the slave revolt against Rome. Others were Cato, Brutus, Hannibal. They used a complex system of ciphers, a secret calendar, and a network of spies to monitor each other and their enemies. It was intricate, paranoid, and deadly serious. Weishaupt, however, knew that his small circle of academics was not enough. He needed to recruit men of real power and influence, and he knew exactly where to find them, inside the lodges of Freemasonry. In 1777, with a calculating eye, he joined a Masonic lodge in Munich. Freemasonry, with its established network, its tradition of secrecy, its intellectual membership, and its own vague ideals of enlightenment, was the perfect host for his parasitic order. It was a Trojan horse. A key figure in this infiltration was Baron Adolf von Knigge, a charismatic and well-connected German diplomat and a prominent Freemason. Weishaupt recruited him in 1780. Knigge was initially thrilled by the Illuminati's intellectual ideals, but found Weishaupt's original rituals to be amateurish and unappealing. It was Knigge who reformed the Illuminati's degree system, making it more elaborate, more mystical, and far more attractive to high-ranking Masons. The plan worked brilliantly. Through Knigge's connections, the Illuminati recruited hundreds of new members, including some of the most influential men in Germany. Dukes, princes, judges, doctors, and famous writers like Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. For a few short, heady years, the Illuminati thrived in the shadows of German Freemasonry, a secret society hiding within another secret society. At its peak, its membership may have numbered as many as 2,500 men across Europe. They were a genuine force for radical Enlightenment thought, a secret society with a real and genuinely subversive political agenda. But the order's own internal dynamics would be its undoing. Weishaupt was an idealist but also an authoritarian micromanager. He and the more pragmatic Baron von Knigge clashed bitterly over the direction of the order. Knigge grew disillusioned with Weishaupt's refusal to cede control and his increasingly radical, atheistic leanings. In 1784, Knigge resigned, a major blow to the order's stability. Worse still, the Bavarian authorities were growing suspicious. Rumors of a secret, anti-clerical, anti-monarchical society were reaching the ears of Karl Theodor, the Elector of Bavaria. A devout Catholic and a staunch conservative, he saw the Illuminati as a direct threat to his throne and the Church. In 1784, the government crackdown began. Karl Theodor issued an edict banning all unauthorized secret societies. In 1785, a second, more specific edict named the Illuminati directly, making membership punishable by death. The state spies went to work. A high-ranking member, Joseph von Utzschneider, betrayed the order, revealing its secrets to the authorities. The downfall was swift and decisive. Government agents raided the homes of known members, seizing their secret papers, ciphers, and ritual instructions. To discredit the order completely, the government published these documents. The secret, radical aims of the Illuminati, their plans to abolish private property, religion, and nations were laid bare for a shocked public to see. Members were arrested, stripped of their positions, and exiled. Weishaupt, the great Spartacus, fled Bavaria and lived out the rest of his life in exile. The Bavarian Illuminati, after less than a decade of existence, was effectively extinguished. And here the historical story should have ended. A footnote in the history of the Enlightenment. A cautionary tale of a failed revolutionary experiment. But it didn't. The suppression of the Illuminati did not kill the idea. It immortalized it. The ghost was about to be born. The very documents published by the Bavarian government to expose and ridicule the order had the opposite effect. They were translated and circulated across Europe and America, fueling not ridicule, but a profound and lasting panic. Two men, in particular, were responsible for transforming the historical Illuminati into the mythical beast we know today. John Robison, a respected Scottish physicist and Freemason, and Augustin Barruel, a French Jesuit priest who had fled the French Revolution. In the late 1790s, both men, working independently, published explosive books. Robison's proofs of a conspiracy and Barruel's memoirs illustrating the history of Jacobinism put forth the same terrifying thesis. The French Revolution was not a spontaneous uprising of the people. It was the result of a long-planned, meticulously executed conspiracy. And who was behind it? A coalition of atheistic philosophers, radical Freemasons, and, at the very heart of the web, the surviving, vengeful members of Adam Weishaupt's Illuminati. They wove a grand, paranoid narrative. The Illuminati had faked their own death, gone deeper underground, and were now orchestrating global chaos to achieve their godless, world-destroying goals. This was the birth of the modern, all-powerful Illuminati conspiracy theory. In a post-revolutionary America, a young republic nervous about its own stability, the theory caught fire. Preachers like Jedediah Morse, from the pulpits of New England, warned their congregations that the Illuminati had secretly infiltrated the country. They were, he claimed, in the government, in the universities, in the Masonic lodges, plotting to overthrow the United States and destroy Christianity. The fear was so palpable that even President George Washington was compelled to address it. In a letter, he acknowledged the diabolical tenets of the historical Illuminati but assured his correspondent that they had not, to his knowledge, taken hold in American Masonic lodges. For the next 2 centuries, the Illuminati legend became a recurring fever dream in the Western imagination. They were blamed for the rise of Napoleon, the revolutions of 1848, the Russian Revolution, and the start of World War I. They were linked to communists, to international bankers, to any group perceived as shadowy and powerful. The Illuminati became a catch-all term for the faceless enemy, the hidden hand guiding the world towards ruin. The 20th century gave the myth new and terrifying life. The infamous, forged anti-Semitic text, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which described a Jewish plot for world domination, borrowed heavily from the structure and language of Barrel's writings on the Illuminati. Later, in the Cold War era, anti-communist groups saw the Illuminati's fingerprints all over the United Nations and other international bodies. And then, in the 1960s, something strange happened. A satirical counterculture book series called The Illuminatus trilogy playfully reintroduced the Illuminati to a new generation. It blended historical fact with wild fiction, quantum physics, and psychedelic drugs, popularizing the idea that everything is connected in a grand, absurd conspiracy. It told you to question everything, but did so with a wink. And then came the internet. In the digital age, an age of information, or rather misinformation, the Illuminati found their perfect home. Forums, blogs, and YouTube videos became the new pulpits. The myth mutated at light speed, absorbing new elements. The Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, all were now seen as modern fronts for the ancient order. Pop culture became the new scripture. Jay-Z, Beyoncé, Kanye West, Lady Gaga, any celebrity who made a triangle symbol with their hands was suddenly an agent of the Illuminati. The symbolism became a self-perpetuating meme, a viral idea completely detached from any historical reality, endlessly remixed and reshared. So, where does that leave us today? Does the Illuminati exist? The historical Bavarian Illuminati of Adam Weishaupt is long, long gone. There is no credible, verifiable evidence that the order survived its suppression in the 1780s. What does exist with undeniable power is the idea of the Illuminati. It has become a potent cultural narrative, a powerful framework for understanding a world that often feels chaotic, unjust, and controlled by forces beyond our grasp. The Illuminati myth speaks to a deep-seated and understandable fear of hidden power, and a very human desire for simple explanations in a dizzyingly complex world. It is a ghost in the machine of history, a story we tell ourselves about the shadows. It is the ultimate secret society, precisely because it may no longer exist, leaving it free to be anything we need it to be, or anything we fear it to be. The Templars gave us the myth of lost sacred treasure. The Freemasons gave us the image of hidden influence and fraternity. But the Illuminati, they gave us the perfect, empty, and therefore all-powerful conspiracy. A story with no end, a secret with no definitive answer, a whisper that, once heard, is impossible to forget. And so, our journey through the shadows comes to a close, at least for tonight. From the holy warriors of Jerusalem, to the philosophical builders of Europe, to the enlightened ghosts of Bavaria, we have seen how the allure of secrecy, both real and imagined, has shaped our world. These societies hold a mirror to our own hopes and fears, our desire for order, our suspicion of power, and our unending quest for knowledge. They remind us that history is not always what it seems, and that the most powerful stories are often the ones whispered in the dark. Thank you for joining me on this voyage with Driftwood Histories. If these stories have stirred your curiosity and soothed your mind, I invite you to subscribe and join our community of fellow travelers. There are many more hidden currents of time for us to explore together. Until then, sleep well, and may your dreams be filled with a little less conspiracy and a little more peace. Good night.